What's up everybody, it's Kelsee Brianna J here with a really fun video for you guys. I know so many people have been asking me which Natasha Denona palette should you buy. So today I am doing a comprehensive review and I am ranking the Natasha Denona palettes from my least favorite to my most favoriteest palette from her. I have all of her palettes. Yes, you heard me. All of her palettes. I've bought them all since she's launched them. I've kept them and collected them. So let's go ahead and jump into it, starting with my least favorite Natasha Denona palette, which happens to be the Mini Sunset palette. I feel like this comes as no surprise to you guys. If you watched my review on it, I was like, it's not really that good. It's very dry. The shimmers aren't that shimmery. The mattes aren't that popping. So this is coming in dead last. I feel like if you want to get the same type of look, I would save up a little bit more and get one of her other eyeshadow palettes. The formulation of this palette is so dry. And I think that she was experimenting with the lower price point situation. This palette is only $25. As you can see, it is super small. The eyeshadows are almost like the same size as almost like a penny or something like that. So you're not going to get a lot of products, but she wanted to create something to appeal to a lot of different people, especially at that lower price point, but it's a pass for me. And next I have my second least favorite palette from Natasha Denona, which is the Mini Star palette. Are we on a pattern here? Do I dislike the mini palettes? Have to wait and see. But I actually just did a video comparing this palette to the original Star palette, and in that video you'll see the eyeshadow palettes go head to head. I used the Mini Star palette on one eye and the regular Star palette on the other eye, and these are not new colors. These are colors from the original Star palette, which is why I compared them in that way. I want you all to go watch that video. You'll see the outcome of what happened when I used this eyeshadow palette, and you'll see why this is my second to last favorite. The Safari palette is next on my list. So you all saw me do a video using the Safari palette initially. I actually just did another video using the Safari palette and the gold palette, and this is ranking third on my list because you can get this eyeshadow palette to work, but you are going to have to work for it to work. This palette contains a very dry eyeshadow formula. I said that when I first did my review of this palette. I've used it a few more times since then. I feel like the colors in this palette look so beautiful when looking at them, but actually using them together, I feel like it can be difficult to navigate. This eyeshadow palette can get really muddy really fast, and that's just because of the tones of the colors. If you mix the wrong color, like, you can end up with caca on your eyelid. So you just have to be really careful with this one. I feel like in comparison to her other eyeshadow palettes, while I like the color story of this palette, it does not flow as cohesively, so you're not able to just freely go in with eyeshadows and do a look. You have to really map out and strategize which eyeshadows you're going to use and how you're going to use them. You have to think about it. And I know a lot of people are like, I'm not trying to think when I'm doing my makeup. I'm trying to zone out. This ranks third. It's not bad, but it's absolutely not my favorite. Next on the list is the Camel eyeshadow palette. So this one is camel themed, and it's a pretty neutral nude type eyeshadow palette. And this one came in the 5-pan formation. I liked this eyeshadow palette. The colors in this palette were a little bit too neutral with my undertone. I'm very golden, as you all can see. So these colors just went on looking very grayish, which I don't mind occasionally. But am I reaching for this over my other Natasha Denona palettes? Nope. I think that the colors in here are just very muted and they're very neutral, and I think this one will look better on somebody who's lighter in complexion than it does on me. On me, it just doesn't give me anything. It's not taking anything away from me, but it's not giving me anything either. So why even waste my time putting it on my eyes? Next on the list is her newest eyeshadow palette. This is the Cranberry eyeshadow palette. This one is the latest, but most certainly not the greatest eyeshadow launch from her. I think it's okay. I have it on my eyes now. I just did a tutorial and a review and swatches of this palette in that video, so make sure you go check it out. I think that this one just isn't as pigmented as I wanted it to be. The colors are pretty, but the only thing that sets this palette apart from the other palettes that I have from her is this pink color, and I really just don't care for pink like that. Now let's get into this Tropic palette. So I like this eyeshadow palette. I love the layout of the colors. I think that it's so fun, it's so refreshing. It definitely reminds me of spring and summer. I have always felt like these eyeshadows are not as pigmented as Natasha Denona's eyeshadow formula is known to be. What I experienced before this palette kind of ruined this palette for me. I think that it's an okay palette in terms of pigmentation. I like the colors more than I like the way that it applies. But because I like the colors so much, I'm willing to put in a little bit more of that work. This is the type of palette that I'm only going to use like maybe 2 months out of the year. And then because of the color selection in here, I'm just really not going to reach for it. This is like one of the last palettes I'm going to reach for if I want to do an eye look using these type colors. The Star palette. This ranks about midway on the list. I've always really liked my Star palette. I've never really loved it. I feel like the Star palette can give you looks, but I just feel like it's always been just super muted and it's not just popping on my eyelid. I really enjoyed the mattes in this palette. I feel like the mattes are just the standout stars of this palette. This is when I noticed that she started making her shimmers a little bit chunkier and you kind of had to work a little bit more to smooth them out. But this is also when I noticed when she cranked up the mattes, and the mattes in here perform so smoothly. I feel like it's a really pretty palette for fall. I've had this palette right at 2 years and I always think about this palette every October and November, and then when the fall is over, I put it away. I don't think that it's necessary to have this, but I like it and I enjoy it. Next I have the Mini Lila. This is actually the first mini eyeshadow palette from Natasha Denona that I actually liked. This one has new colors in it from her and I think that they are so pretty. I love the purples in here. These purples are so unique. I don't have anything else like these in my collection, and you would think that, oh my gosh, you have so many different purple eyeshadows that you can just easily dupe them, but I don't feel that way. I feel like this palette was really well formulated and the colors worked so beautifully with one another. So I'm happy to have this, especially if you want to do a pop of purple but you don't want to take a huge purple eyeshadow palette with you. This is perfect. Following the Mini Lila palette, I'm gonna have to say the Lila palette. This palette is very cohesive. You can do a lot of different looks with this palette. The only thing that I wanted from this palette was a deep matte purple, but other than that, this satisfied a lot of my purple craving. Purple is one of my favorite colors. I was happy with this palette. I feel like it was fun. I just wanted one more purple color. Like if she had replaced either this shade or this shade, this would have probably ranked higher on the list, but it's still a beautiful palette. The formulation of the palette is still great. The Goals palette. This palette is so pretty. This is definitely one of her newer palettes. Look at this thing. Super pretty palette. It is a palette full of gold. It's like little gold nuggets. Every gold eyeshadow in this palette is unique. I love the way this palette is formulated. This is giving me her old school formulation tease. I think that it's so pretty, and you would think that because it's gold it'll just all look the same. No, golds in this palette differ enough to justify being able to get this palette and be happy with it. And actually I think the golds in this palette are different enough from anything else in my collection to justify it. So I love the way it looks, I love the way it's formulated, and I definitely want to do more looks using this palette. We are now entering into my top 5 Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes. Number 5, the original green brown 28 pan eyeshadow palette. This palette is one of the palettes that started my love for Natasha Denona. When I saw this online before it launched, I saw Jaclyn Hill have it and I saw it other places on the internet, and I was like, I absolutely have to have that palette no matter what, and I made it happen. To date, I still think this is my most expensive makeup item that I own. I think that it's beautiful. Looking at it, it looks like basic colors, but the colors, once you put them on your eyes, it's like they come alive, and you can get such unique looks using this palette. It's still one of my favorites. I think that it's gorgeous. I love the tones in here. I love how they shift, and this is one of my most prized makeup possessions. Next, the Sunset palette. This palette probably is her most popular palette. This was a limited edition palette. She brought it back due to the high demand, and for good reason, because oh my gosh, beautiful palette. Especially when it initially launched, this was all the rage. That reddish golden warm tone type eyeshadow palette. This palette can give you some banger looks. It has everything you need to do an entire look, and it is absolutely gorgeous. Look at the composition of this palette. I mean, I don't know another palette that's more visually appealing in the pan than this one. Top 3 palettes. You have made it this far. Number 3, another Natasha Denona OG, the Blue Purple palette. Look at this palette. If you love blues and you love purples, this is the palette to have. It is so pretty. And I love using this palette when I want to do a really bold look if I'm going somewhere, because it stands out. These colors are so unique. I don't have anything like these in my collection. I love the green one, but between the two, I just like this one a little bit more, and I think it speaks more to my purple love. And it has the necessary elements to be able to transition from a day look to a night look. So you can go really bold and intense with this eyeshadow palette, but you also can go more subdued. It's totally up to you. Top 2. This is the Joya palette from the holiday launch. This palette is formulated so smoothly. It is so beautiful. The pigmentation is gorgeous. I love this formula. She has not released anything like this since this. You would think that because of the color type that it would be very difficult to achieve perfection with these type tones, but nope, she reached it, and it's absolutely stunning. The only thing that I do not like about this formulation is that it dries up and it will fall out of the pan. But if we're just looking strictly at color, if we're looking at how it performs, this palette reigns in her launches. This one is absolutely gorgeous. And coming in at the number 1 slot, it's top 2 and it ain't number 2. This one is the Aries palette. This palette is absolutely everything. I was going back and forth like, oh my gosh, I cannot choose between this palette or the Joya palette, but I'm gonna have to give it to this one. The formulation is the same amongst the two palettes, but this one, the color selection is just so unique that it just stands out. Absolutely perfection. I want her to create her eyeshadow palettes all over. She can do them all over, and if she does it like this, I will be 100% satisfied, and I would rebuy every single last palette if it came like this. I know that sounds crazy, but I would. I feel like this eyeshadow formula is just perfect. You can use it every day. You can use it if you want to go out. But these colors just speak to me. I want to see Natasha Denona outdo herself with this palette. But until then, this is the prototype. Let me know your ranking of your favorite Natasha Denona palettes down in the comments section. If you want to see my individual looks with these palettes, swatches of these palettes, and any other additional information regarding these palettes, I will have all of these videos linked down in the description box. I've done a video using all of these palettes, so there's been work put in, so make sure you support and go check those videos out if you want to get more information. I look forward to reading you all's comments, and I will check you all in my very next video. Smooches. Bye.